here's Brody Brazil.
You know I am always ready to take your calls on the voicemail line at 8334-BRODY, and whether you've got a question or a comment or a compliment or even a criticism, I literally listen to every single message you leave, and then I get to play back and respond to the very best ones.
Hi, Brody. This is Kenny from Cottontown, Tennessee. And my question is regarding the NFL's return to Los Angeles. It's been a decade plus since the NFL has returned. And I think it's safe to say that the Rams have done a decent job of getting a solid fan base back.
Agreed.
It's hard not to when you win a Super Bowl in front of your home stadium.
That's right.
The Chargers, on the other hand, it's pretty obvious despite producing a really good team with Justin Herbert as your quarterback, Khalil Mack on the defensive end as a star, and Jim Harbaugh as your head coach, it is clearly not enough to fill the home games at SoFi Stadium. All you have to do is look at the Pittsburgh Steelers game on Sunday night to see that. And obviously we know the Raiders played in L.A., and they have a fan base that doubles the Rams and the Chargers combined.
Probably true.
Is there a legal precedent where the NFL could come to Mark Davis and say, hey, Mark, would you be willing to sell Allegiant Stadium to Dean Spanos? And could that happen? Could we see a scenario where the Raiders come back to Los Angeles and the Chargers go and be the Las Vegas Chargers? I don't know if there is a precedent in that. It's something that you've read about in the past. But I thought it would be an interesting conversation because it is getting more and more ridiculous every year that the Rams do try and the Chargers don't get a solid fan base in Los Angeles, because I am a fan of both of those teams. I am of LA sports, and I hope for the Dodgers for a three-peat. Thanks for taking my call.
All right, Kenny, thank you very much for that very interesting voicemail. And I think the tone needs to be set here for my response right away with this. Let's get your thinking caps on. Let's think outside the box. I don't want to add any credibility, Kenny, to what you're saying. Like, I don't want people to watch this video and say, hey, Brazil is suggesting this might happen. I'm not here to add on to what you're suggesting. I'm only saying, let's dive into that because it is interesting. There is something to it. There's not nothing here. There is something here to discuss. There's a lot of different elements about this situation. Could we have a team swap between the Raiders and the Chargers, between Las Vegas and Los Angeles? Now, let me start off here at the very end by telling you that 85% of what you just said and what I'm about to say makes sense in all of this. It's the 15% that we can't figure out, that maybe people couldn't come to terms with, is what is ultimately going to hold this back. But there's a lot here to that point and to all these points that make sense. The Raiders are far more popular in Los Angeles than the Rams and the Chargers, probably combined, probably multiple times over. The Raiders just connect with their history to Los Angeles, and the Rams came back from St. Louis, and really there's no reason the Chargers ever should have left San Diego. And Los Angeles football fans probably look at the Chargers. I don't want to say this on their behalf because I'm up here in the northern half of the state, but it feels to me like a Los Angeles football fan looks at the Chargers and says, yeah, you're like our third choice. Of the two teams we get, you're our third choice. We would rather have had the Raiders be here and you, the Chargers, be out in Las Vegas. But that's just the way that it worked, right? The Oakland deal and the Raiders leaving and going to Las Vegas and kind of all these things within a 5 to 7 year span of the mid 2010s into about 2020, all these things developing in SoFi Stadium, being funded by the Rams owner, Stan Kroenke, and then obviously the Chargers also moving in as a roommate, basically, to that situation, and them departing San Diego. Again, I want to key in on that. In my opinion, the Chargers should, number one, still be in San Diego before we start talking about moving them to Los Angeles, or here in this case, having them swap with the Raiders for Las Vegas. But yeah, the Raiders are far more popular in Los Angeles. They could print money with those tickets and merchandise and everything in a return to Los Angeles. Could you imagine how dynamic that would be? Now, I get it. Mark Davis and company, literally and company, they just moved to Las Vegas within the last 5-7 years. Like, that's been part of their process. I'm not talking about when they played their first games. Their Allegiant opened in 2020, but their process even several years before that of going down there, team headquarters, moving people, all that stuff. It's been almost a decade of that entire process. I don't know that you could immediately talk them into this, but think about it from their perspective. The move to Los Angeles, the fan base you would have, the credibility, the instant buzz that you would create by going to Los Angeles. And for the Chargers, right? The Chargers are seeking more fans. The Chargers are now kind of in this nomadic state. Problem with the Raiders in Las Vegas is I don't know if there's a market attachment to that team in Las Vegas. I don't know if there are a lot of Las Vegas football fans who are season ticket holders who are actually the ones going to Raider games. Are they the ones buying tickets and then flipping them and selling them to Kansas City fans or Denver fans or Pittsburgh fans? I've seen a lot of visiting fan bases, San Francisco fans. I've seen them all take over Allegiant Stadium and basically make it their own. What if the Raiders are looking around saying, this is a problem here in this market that we can't ever fix? Las Vegas is either not big enough or it's not homegrown enough so that we can't have our proper own fan base here. And the Raiders are kind of a regionally loved team in the first place, but my thinking is that they'll look around and say, how can we ever get to have that home field advantage like we want here? If we really want to win football games, if we really want to create a Raider community, how can we do it? Can't do it here. This isn't a bad market for selling tickets because all the visiting teams fans want to come to our games. So maybe the Chargers think about this from their perspective and say, well, here in Los Angeles, we don't have the fan base that loves us like they're in San Diego, but maybe a fresh start in Las Vegas is for us. And maybe the guaranteed prospect of it doesn't even matter who the home team is in Las Vegas, they're here to see the road team. Maybe that's enticing for the Chargers. Maybe that's something that they would actually consider. They could get more attendance in Las Vegas. Let's also talk about this from a legal perspective, a detachment perspective. And you mentioned the NFL. Could they step in and ask one of these teams to do it? I don't know if that's the case. I really do think it would have to be these two teams on their own coming up with this agreement and arrangement. But there is one thing that could make this more likely to happen. Again, I'm saying the reason it won't happen is because of the 15% that's up in the air that nobody can really lock in on. 85% of this makes sense, and here's part of it. Neither team, the Chargers nor the Raiders, own their own stadium. The Raiders are playing at Allegiant Stadium. That's owned by the Las Vegas Stadium Authority. The Raiders are part of the entire situation there. They're part of the real reason the stadium's there, but they don't own it. They're not tied to it entirely forever. Essentially, they could get out of that if another NFL team was moving in. And the same thing with the Chargers at SoFi Stadium. That's owned by Stan Kroenke. That's owned by the owner of the Rams, not the Chargers. Again, the Chargers are just the tenants at this stadium. They're not the owners. They're not the landlords of this stadium. So neither team is in a contractually locked down situation where they'd have to sell the stadium as part of this. They'd have to do something extra dramatic. Yeah, there are leases and there are arrangements, but if you're swapping teams and they're swapping deals, maybe it's a lot easier than you would actually expect. I will say this, though, in my final thought. I'm not sure the Raiders would ever want to share a stadium again, because if they did go to Los Angeles, they would be playing in Inglewood, they would be playing at SoFi Stadium, they would be sharing that venue with the Rams. The Raiders hated sharing the Coliseum with the Oakland A's. Even when they came back, the A's were the problem. And that could be true, that could be false, but they didn't like sharing. They're now in their own brand new stadium, literally a couple years old, 5-6 years old. And so they're in a spot where there's nothing to complain about. That would be the worry for me from the Raiders side. Again, if they wanted to do this, would they even be willing to share a stadium? Even during their time here in Northern California, did you know that when Levi's Stadium was built in Santa Clara, right? So this is 40 miles south of the Coliseum. But when they built Levi's Stadium in the early 2010s, they built an entire visiting, well, they didn't build it out, but they created space, they left space for a visiting, I should say this, a second NFL football team and their locker room and their facilities. So home team number 2, and visiting team all had facilities at Levi's Stadium. They did that with the forethought that maybe the Raiders would have stadium issues at the Coliseum and they'd want to stay in the Bay Area and they would share Levi's Stadium. Kind of what you see in Los Angeles with the 2 NFL teams, kind of like what you see in, well, technically New Jersey or New York with the 2 NFL teams. The idea that 2 NFL teams would share Levi's Stadium. Well, that didn't happen, again, in large part because the Raiders just didn't want to share. And they would obviously have to share if they went to Los Angeles. I don't think they're building a brand new NFL venue in Los Angeles again anytime soon. So again, 85% of this makes sense. And again, I know I'm doing one of these videos right here, but sometimes you just got to open up your mind and think about these things, think critically about these things, and understand why, yes, even though it makes a lot of sense really for both sides, there's probably just enough reasons why it won't happen. Hey, did you like this video? Did you like the sound effects? I think I'm going to start using some more sound effects here on the channel now that I've added a second Stream Deck, and I can do that so easy. Or maybe you'll get super tired of them. If you've made it this far, comment down below. Hate or love the sound effects. Keep me updated. All right. Thumbs up also down there while you're here before this ends. That helps me, the video, and the channel. And if you're new here, glad to see you. Nice to meet you. Come back soon. The best way to do that is for you to hit that subscribe button like right now. See you next time.